Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today because I came by. I thought I would go on and deliver my opinion upon this film that is currently available on Netflix. So, while I was watching this movie, I was consistently comparing I Came By to a movie called Bad Samaritan because the ideas of the movie are somewhat similar up until a point where, like, it becomes two different films. But so, the ideas of both of these movies, and then I'll kind of individualize them. We have one to two men that are to do a string of certain crimes. And come to find out, they do these crimes on certain people they do not like. And so they then go to these people's places, and at some point, we have these characters realize that one home that they are to go into was to be a massive mistake, as we have one character who is then making his way through his next victim's home to then find out that there is to be a person being held against their will in this home, and now a guy like Toby has to go on his side to try to do the right thing here, and at some point that eventually blows up in his face. And that, to me, is kind of where Bad Samaritan and I Came By, that's where the comparisons after that kind of change or kind of shift into two different stories. I would definitely recommend anybody going on and seeing Bad Samaritan. It's a great film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was like, oh my god, like this movie keeps escalating and it's so fascinating, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Whereas I Came By focuses a lot on time passing, which, if you can't really show proof, really, of that in a movie, besides a child being born, then you might as well not even continue to bring it up in the film. To me, to consistently ping on the fact, hey, months have passed since this event happened, hey, like, even more time has passed, I'm like, I don't care. Did anybody have a haircut during that whole entire movie? Did anybody grow a beard? Like, did anybody move from different location to location because they decide to move on or change their life around in that time? No. So you can't prove to me that legitimately time has passed. So also, this movie is just a slow slog of a film that I was to be like, man, I could be watching Bad Samaritan and being more excited about a movie. Instead, I'm just like counting the minutes for this movie to be over, because it seems like they go to the same well for a number of things in this movie besides the whole time passing thing. We have so many people that are just making their way into Hector Blake's house, like police officers, detectives, any number of Toby's friends or family, that I'm like, man, Hector, your security in your home just effing sucks. Or just like, man, like, you should move. Like, obviously, somebody's gonna go on and, like, put two and two together here, buddy, and then you're gonna get arrested. You should have gone on and changed something up, which he didn't. So yeah, with this film, I just thought it was just so heavily disappointing. Like, I don't want to just straight up say that it was an awful film, but it's pretty dang close. It's just, like, Bad Samaritan is a way better example of this movie, and I would recommend for anyone who can go on and find that film to check it out or just watch my review of it and you can see how happy I was while watching that film. So, because I just kind of like, I finally like stumbled upon this movie. I'm like, man, this movie's great. But this movie, I Came By, what a boring bore fest. So, with that said, really, I just want to go on and go into spoilers about this one because there isn't much that I like heavily want to much more say in the cryptic like sense of this film. I just want to go into spoilers. So let's double fire this bad boy up. It's about that time to just go into spoilers because it's spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time to spoil. I Came By. So, in the very beginning of this, we of course have two characters that have gone on and done a crime that we weren't even aware that they did. They just drop right out of this home, and we have Jay, who is going on and talking to Toby, and he is saying something about, hey, when you gotta dip, you gotta dip. And I'm like, what the is this? Is this some gibberish that these guys are talking about? I'm like, what is this guy even saying? And so both these guys run off to have all of a sudden this banker and this female going into this place making out, and the woman is to have to convince this man to look at his wall to have this banker realize, oh my god, I've been horrifically like graffitied upon my wall. Oh no! And it's telling me I came by. Wow. I am so scared. So, with all these guys kind of being rich, like, what is to be the real sweat off their back? I don't really get it. So, it's like, oh no, I can defeat these people with a thing of paint. I'm gonna paint my walls in anger. So, we then turn around and are to showcase, oh no, another victim from the I Came By graffiti artists. And this blogger is going on and giving his opinion, Dave Colombo, about these men. And he's also finding a graffiti artist also, who is to give his 2 cents and is to mention that he assumes that these guys are some kind of posers, that you don't go actually in someone's house and spray paint upon their home. That is a no-no, and that they went after a banker, which is very cliche, like what's the next person they're going to go after, so on and so forth. So these guys are going on and getting getting a reputation, or they're getting the word out there that these guys are doing these things. So good on them. So we have these guys that I guess are doing some lawn care job, and they're chopping up these trees, and they go on to find their next victim, their next client. And so come to find out, this is a guy named Hector Blake. And Hector Blake is to be this judge that, come to find out, they look into him and they realize, like, yeah, definitely this is going to be the next guy. We go on to have a guy named Jamil, or Jay, who makes his way into Blake's house to supposedly be looking for the bathroom, but instead he goes to the living room to take a photo of, I'm assuming, this security device, and is to text the word "a judge" to Toby. And so they are to be like, okay, this is gonna be the guy. Like, so Blake is to notice Jay is walking through his home, and Jay just tells Blake, hey, I was just looking for the bathroom. And Blake, of course, is like, and you went into the living room to find it. And he's like, well, yeah, I just didn't know. And he's like, okay, like, here's the bathroom. It's right over there. So we have Jay as well as Toby, who are to finish up their job and go to their separate houses. And come to find out, Jay is to find out from his girlfriend Nas that now that they have been together for such a long time, that Nas is to finally tell Jay that, like, well, hey, like you're kind of stuck with me now. And Jay's like, what do you mean? And Nas is to tell Jay that she, of course, is now pregnant. And so Jay is like, oh my god, now I have to change my life around. I can't go on and do all these stupid crimes that aren't going to lead anywhere. So Toby, it seems, is to make his way home, where he is finding out things about what people are thinking about what he's doing, as well as also him listening to very loud music to the point of his mother just be like, God, like, I live here too, like, this is blaringly loud music. But we come to find out Toby and his mother Lizzie are, like, in conflict with one another because of what had happened to the father of this home, and how he had died, and how like, there is friction between these two characters. So, and how Lizzie is wanting to have Toby, like, get his life straight, get his life together, and try and go on and, like, be a guy who has a consistent job and is less flaky and yada yada yada. So, as well as Toby is to tell his own mother, it's like, well, hey, you don't know what I'm fighting. You don't know what I'm doing. Sure. And so we go on in this film, and so Toby is now to make his way back to Jay to see, like, yeah, this judge guy sounds about right. And Jay is like, yeah, about that. Like, since now that my girlfriend is now pregnant, I'm going to pull away. I'm going to pull away from all this. I'm going to clean myself up. I'm going to get a legitimate job. Da la 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 la. Because, like, yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. And Toby's just like, but I need you. And Jay's like, no. Like, Jay's starting to realize that he has a record. And so, yeah, like, he's like, no. Like, I have to do right by my girlfriend. So, come to find out, Jay is at some point going to re-meet up with his girlfriend, and after his girlfriend had broken to the news to her parents about this pregnancy, they straight up kick her out of the home. Jay is there to go on and kind of soften the blow for Nas, as she is to be brought into Jay's place. And because Nas's family was to kick her out because they are to, of course, not want this pregnancy, blah, 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 blah. So, we now, of course, have Toby, who is to go on his own to graffiti Hector Blake's house. So, Toby makes his way to Hector's home and is to sneak in here and makes his way all the way through this guy's house to find some unusual door, this metal door. And so, with the curiosity of Toby, he figures out a way to get inside this door to then find out there is some very drained, very exhausted man who is to be left in this very small room with a bucket to take a dump in. And so, immediately when we have Toby, who is to try and pick this guy up, all of a sudden this man ends up peeing himself uncontrollably because this guy is to probably have no real muscle mass, and plus he probably hasn't been fed in who knows how long, because this guy is to basically be tortured to death, possibly by Hector Blake. So Toby wants to go on and try to do the right thing here, but then all of a sudden Hector Blake is to also make his way back into his own home. And so now Toby then tries to hide away while Blake is to make his way back into his home, because Blake had gone on and done squash with some police officer, and Blake is the thought that he wasn't going to get much competition from this guy, but he found out the opposite. And so all of a sudden Blake is noticing that there has been some security notification that was sent to his phone. So Blake then goes on to go to his house and find out what that security issue is. And he did, like, we had the police officer is like, well, hey, like, I can go on and I can send, like, somebody by your house. And he's like, oh, no, like, I don't want you to do that. So, of course he doesn't. Because it could be the guy that finally figured out a way to break out of this guy's house. And so, like, Blake wants to go on and try to apprehend him before he does that, or something like that. So Blake makes his way through the house, and the officer calls him, or the guy who he played squash with, Blake, calls him. It's like, well, hey, like, are you okay? And Blake's like, yeah, it must be some gremlin, or it must be something run amok. And Blake doesn't see that there's anything to cause really alarm. And so the guy's like, well, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, maybe we'll reschedule our squash meeting, as we have Toby, who is, like, running from behind Blake and quickly making out of this guy's home. So Blake goes on to check on his prisoner to torture him some more. And so Toby runs to speak with Jay to tell him what had happened. And so, really, because Blake is to be this high-profile judge, it really feels like anything that these guys are going to go on and try to do, Blake has a workaround about. Because, really, he can just kind of know any number of these people and figure out a way to, like, a perfect combination of words to get them to stop looking through his home at certain points, or to really just rub it in their faces that they're not going to find anything. So we have Toby, who ends up calling the PC, the police, to have them check into Blake's home. And the police are asking Blake, it's like, well, could there be anybody that could be calling for a false call here? And Blake's like, well, of course there is. I don't know how many people that I've put away. So, yeah, like, if anybody's going to call, it'd be a plethora of different people. There's no way to be sure. And so, as they start going on and checking through Blake's house, we have at some point where Blake is to go on and tell these officers that it's like, well, hey, like, do you really think that you're, like, that you should be kind of wasting my time like this and doing this, like, full-scale investigation? Like, how would I go on and talk to your supervisor to, like, get him to, like, call this all off, because it's a waste. And so, like, the officers are just like, ooh, gee golly, he knows who to like who to call. Oh no, besides the Ghostbusters. So they just scamper off because they're like, well, like I think that this was a prank, and like this is a judge. I don't think there's a like we haven't really found any like real evidence here, so we're just gonna leave. So Toby, of course, is very upset, and so at some point this just leads to have Toby go on his own to try to retrieve this man who is to be held captive in Blake's house. So, Toby Bree breaks in to Blake's house to rescue this man, and come to find out what happens is by the time that Blake or by the time that Toby tries to get to this guy to pick him up to try to get him out of here, all of a sudden we find that Blake is to have this massive paddle and is to smack Toby in the back of the head, dropping him here, and they write him off in the movie to say that they had gone on and chopped up his body and killed him, but they have to reference that on screen. Or they have to reference that with Blake telling us that via this film. So we now have Toby that has gone missing, and the last time that Toby had talked to his mother and him had an argument where it seems like he might not be able to return home because Lizzie is telling Toby to give her the keys to this house, and that Toby is to have to go on and get his life straight, and then he's welcome back in the house. And Toby is mentioning to Lizzie that he wants to go on and give or get the money that he's owed, and Lizzie does not want to go on and give Toby any of that kind of money, supposedly that he is owed from like something of his father's. So we have that going on. So we find out that Lizzie is to be this therapist for some goofy reason, and none of this matters in the story, but it exists. So Lizzie is to have this patient called Faisal. I don't know. I don't think it really matters. So Liz is to have this patient, and so it seems that this patient is to have to go through a certain kind of schooling, a medical doctor in schooling, that he really does not want to go into, because he, of course, is to get sick at the sight of blood. And so, but his parents, that's what they want for him, and he does not want to go into that profession. And so this patient and Liz are to try to have these therapeutic moments, and come to find out what just happens with this patient is he has another session where he tells Lizzie that he was to go on and try to end his own life because he wanted to get back at his parents for hoping that if he took his life, that they would like realize that like what a mistake that they had gone to push this guy to this point, and so on and so forth. And Liz, who is all of a sudden is now hearing this, and her son has been gone for some time now, is to start to get very emotional and is to start to cry during the session, realizing that that maybe could be the case for her own son. That maybe this guy disappearing is the whole result of that Liz was to push Toby too hard. So we have Liz and Jay consistently meeting up with one another in Toby's room. And so Liz is to go through Toby's stuff to see if she can find some piece of the puzzle to know where this judge had headed to, or where had Toby headed to try to go after this judge or something like that. So we have Jay and we have Lizzie talking, and time has passed. So Jay is to find some secret compartment that Toby had that is to lead to some piece of paper that Liz is to put in front of this detective to just say, aha, like, this is the real evidence that we need to go on and have you guys now search through Blake's home to find Toby. And so this detective goes on to try and go through this house, and when she finally goes through this one room that originally had this guy in this room under his own or held under his will, they then open this door to realize that no one is in there because I guess Blake had shifted this guy elsewhere. And so Blake is really just shoving the fact that there's no one in this room in this detective's face. And the judge is to tell this detective, it's like, haha, like, you're not going to find anything in here anyways. And the detective's like, oh my god, like, you're just straight up telling me that, like, you're going to get away with this. And, like, the detective takes, like, a great offense to that and is like, I want to go on and I want to freaking nail this guy. But she doesn't know how. So now Liz is to take a certain bit of time to now watch over Blake consistently by having her car just driving by, watching Blake's home, see what he does. And so we have Blake, who is to be swimming within this pool and is to all of a sudden have this masseuse. And come to find out, this masseuse is to be trying to go on and get certain papers to go through so he can get an asylum, and that he is to try to go on and make things work with him being here. And the judge is to tell this masseuse, of course, a guy by the name of Amid, that he can possibly figure out a way to help this guy. And Amid is like, okay, all right, like, this sounds really great. So both Blake and Amid are to go to Blake's home, and Blake is to go on and give Amid this drink. And so Blake goes on and explains to Amid his past and how at some point he was to go on and beat a man to death and how it felt exhilarating. And Amid had to all of a sudden desperately need to go to the bathroom, and Amid was starting to realize that he had gotten drugged by Blake. And so Blake, when Amid was to make back to the room that he was in, and Amid is now starting to lose control from being drugged, Blake then goes on to like start to set up that this is going to be another guy that he is to be held or holding captive. And so Amid instead crazily finds this window, breaks out of it, and rushes out of this place. Lizzie, who is still there, watches on as Amid is to try to escape out of this house. And Liz is to find Amid, get his story, and tell Jay about all this. And so, yeah, like, this guy is going on and, like, kidnapping people. And so Jay is telling, like, Lizzie, it's like, well, do you think that this guy is going to go on and, like, come forward and be, like, the witness to all this? And Lizzie is telling Jay here that Amid is to, of course, want to try to get an asylum here. And there's a possibility that him going on and being a witness to what had happened here can conflict with that. So that means that this guy wants to keep his mouth shut. And so now we're back to square one yet again. So, and we don't even know if Toby's really dead or alive or not. We have to confirm that by a certain time in this film. So we have Blake that is to re-meet up with Amid and is to lure him back to his car by telling him, hey, like, I know that you want some paperwork to be fast-tracked here, and I can be the one guy who can help you with that. So how about you just come with me and we'll do that? And Amid's just like, yeah, this seems too good to be true. Maybe I can kind of blackmail this guy and get what I want. Come to find out what Amid is going to get is to be chopped up in little pieces and killed like a number of people that Blake is to go on and do too. So sorry, Amid, didn't quite get the best of what you were hoping that you were going to get here. So now we just have Liz. Liz, at some point, is just like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to break into this guy's house. I'm just going to break into this guy's house, trying to hope that my son is still there and save his life. So Liz, or really just Lizzie, I should say Lizzie is to find out that Blake is putting the secret key right in front of the open, where, like, Blake obviously knows that Lizzie's there. Like, the car looks very suspicious. And so Blake is setting this up. So, knowing that somebody's going to go on and break into this house again. So, Lizzie is the one that does that, breaks into this house, and come to find out we have Blake who's lying and waiting, as again, we have Blake that makes his way into his house and is to now to continue to grab onto Lizzie as she is consistently pulling away, trying to run away. Blake continues to grab onto her, trip her, and then drags her to get handcuffed to this pipe, where then Lizzie is to now witness to the chopping up of a body. And so now Lizzie's asking for Toby, her son, And Blake is like, oh yeah, I already chopped that guy up and killed him. Like, he's already, like, dead. Like, he was dead a long time ago. His ashes burned up so long ago. And Lizzie's like, oh my god, my son. It's like, yeah. Hence why you waited too long. You waited too long. Like, if you would have waited, like, a day, then maybe the kid would have still been alive. But yeah, like, you waited months. Like, this guy probably wouldn't have lasted that long. There's no way. So now that Lizzie is gone, Jay is to now have Lizzie's keys to the house. And Jay is starting to call Lizzie's phone. And oh, we also had where Blake was to look into Toby's information to kind of see family members and stuff like that. And that's how Blake was to realize that Lizzie was like consistently stalking his house because he saw pictures of Toby and his mother. Like, aha, like, so this girl is planning something. So, but now Jay is going into Lizzie's home consistently and realizing that there's obviously no one there. That food is starting to rot and have flies in it, so he's like, oh my god, like, something's really wrong here. Because when Jay would always come into Lizzie's house and like sneak up on her and scare her, and then say like, hey, I'm here because I wanted to talk, or hey, I'm here because I wanted you to know that we have like a baby now and his name is Aiden, and like I want you to kind of come over and see him because like you're the closest thing to a grandmother, and so like, hey, like, how about you come over? So Jay is to then realize like this somehow needs to stop. That this guy is going to keep on doing what he's doing, and like no one is going to go on and catch him, and people keep disappearing. So now Jay is to find out that his girlfriend is to have this paper that Blake is going to look into via this what is the right word here? This big lavish meeting that they're going on into, that Blake is to be a part of and do this whole speech within. And so we have Nas here that is telling Jay that he needs to go on and break into the house while this guy is away. So Jay breaks into the house, and he is wearing like head to toe with all this gear on, and so Jay is looking for Lizzie or Toby, and come to find out he finds neither. Too much time has passed, both of them are probably now dead, and so still the only person that is left is still that one guy who is just holding on for dear life. And so finally we have Jay that is to have to finally go on and confront Blake, because Blake makes his way home. Nas is trying to call Jay, like telling him, hey, like this guy's making his way back, yada yada yada. Blake is to see this paper that this girl had put together, and Blake immediately throws it in the trash and is to make his way home. So Blake makes his way home to then try to fight off Jay. Jay then is to beat up Blake to the point of Jay then finding a way to tie or tape this guy up. And then Jay opens up this garage door that this Clay room is in to then free this man so he can go and tell the cops his story. And Jay, who is now seemingly limping around, is going to try and run off here so he will not go on and be convicted of some crime. So, happy ending by the end of this, technically, even though both Toby and Lizzie are now dead. And so, really, that's just how the movie just finishes up, rattles off, and so on and so forth. So I think I'm going to rattle off also to try and just get out of here. So thank you for going on and listening to this review, if that's what you did, because I really do appreciate it. So with that said, yeah, I kind of tried to like cut through just a lot of dialogue. There are some points here where Jay is through amounts of time is to have his relationship between Nas like slowly but surely trying to slip through his fingers, and Jay is to try to tell Nas, it's like, well, hey, do you think that we can have one more shot at this whole thing? And like there's a possibility for that working. And so really happy ending had by all. With the exclusion of a number of people who died. And also Blake, who ended up getting arrested. But we also have the detective that was like on the scene, like, yeah, like we caught him, yeah, like this is the guy I wanted, and come to find out he did this after all. Great. So other than that, yeah, that's all I wanted to go on and talk about for this film. I think, yeah, that's it. So I'm just gonna get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this movie. If there's anything that I forgot about, also let me know, because I'm sure that there's a billion things that I just kind of skipped around about, because this movie is what it is. So with that, bye everybody. Bye everybody.